Have you ever felt invisible? Like you're working so hard just to keep your head above water while the world just keeps pushing you down? This is the story of Alara Vance, a waitress drowning in debt and despair, whose simple act of kindness towards a forgotten man in a wheelchair was about to ignite a firestorm. She offered him a moment of dignity when no one else would, paying for his meals from her own empty pockets. But she had no idea who he truly was. She couldn't have known that this quiet, crippled man held her entire future in his gnarled hands, and that her cruel, tyrannical boss was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Stay with me, because what happens next is a testament to the fact that sometimes the person you think you're saving is actually the one who is there to save you. The fluorescent lights of the Golden Spoon Diner hummed a monotonous, weary tune, a sound that had become the soundtrack to Alara Vance's life. At 26, her world had shrunk to the space between the swinging kitchen doors and the sticky vinyl of the booths. Each day was a grueling marathon of refilling coffee cups, wiping down counters, and forcing a smile that rarely reached her tired gray eyes. The smile was the hardest part. It felt like a mask she had to glue on every morning, and by the end of her 10-hour shift, her facial muscles ached with the effort. Life hadn't always been this way. Alara had once dreamed of being a graphic designer, her sketchbooks filled with vibrant landscapes and bold characters. But that dream had been packed away in a dusty box under her bed, along with her college acceptance letter, the day her younger sister, Lily, was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder. Suddenly, dreams were a luxury she couldn't afford. Survival was the only currency that mattered, and her paycheck from the Golden Spoon, meager as it was the lifeline keeping them both afloat. The diner itself was a relic of a bygone era, a place that clung to its past with worn-out charm. But under the management of Mr. Gregory Finch, its soul had begun to curdle. Finch was a man carved from spreadsheets and profit margins, his heart a cold, hard calculator. He saw his staff not as people, but as liabilities. He'd dock to pay for a broken plate, time their bathroom breaks with a stopwatch, and patrol the floor like a shark circling a school of fish, sniffing for any sign of weakness or inefficiency. His favorite phrase was, "If you have time to lean, you have time to clean," and he'd hiss it at anyone caught taking a breath. It was on a particularly grim Tuesday afternoon, with the rain outside matching the mood inside, that the old man first appeared. He maneuvered his rusty, squeaking wheelchair through the diner's entrance with a quiet determination that seemed to take all his energy. He was frail, his body contorted in a way that suggested a long and painful battle with his own physicality. His clothes, a threadbare tweed jacket and faded trousers, had seen better decades. His face was a roadmap of hardship, but his eyes, a surprisingly sharp blue, held a flicker of profound stillness. He parked his wheelchair at the smallest, most secluded booth in Alara's section. She approached him, her order pad in hand, her pre-programmed smile already in place. "Welcome to the Golden Spoon. What can I get for you today?" He looked up at her, and for a moment, the stillness in his eyes seemed to absorb all the frantic energy of the diner. His voice, when it came, was a soft, raspy whisper. "Just a coffee, please, black, and perhaps a slice of toast, plain." It was the humblest of orders, yet he spoke it as if he were asking for the world. As Alara went to get his order, she saw Mr. Finch watching from behind the counter, his lip curled in a sneer of distaste. Finch hated vagrants, or anyone who even remotely looked like they couldn't afford a full 3-course meal. He saw the old man not as a customer, but as a stain on the diner's already faded upholstery. When Alara brought the coffee and toast, the man's gnarled hands struggled to lift the chipped mug. She watched him for a moment, her heart clenching with a familiar ache. He reminded her so much of the vulnerability she saw in Lily on her bad days, the frustration of a mind trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate. He ate slowly, methodically, making the single slice of toast last for nearly half an hour. When he was done, he gestured for the check. Alara brought it over. The total was $350. She watched as he fumbled in his jacket pockets, a look of quiet panic dawning on his face. He checked every pocket, his movements slow and pained. Finally, he looked up at her, his blue eyes clouded with shame. I seem to have forgotten my wallet, he whispered, the words catching in his throat. From across the diner, Mr. Finch's eyes narrowed. He started moving towards their table, a predator sensing an opportunity for a public shaming. Ilara knew what was coming. A loud, humiliating scene. Finch threatening to call the police over $3.50, and the old man being thrown out onto the rainy street. Something inside Ilara snapped. She couldn't bear to watch it. Acting on pure instinct, she gave the old man a small, reassuring nod. "Don't you worry about it," she said softly, her voice just for him. She quickly took the check from his table. "It's on the house today." Finch was halfway to the table when he saw her take the check. He stopped, confused, as she walked to the cash register. The old man looked at her, his expression a mixture of relief and bewilderment. He opened his mouth to say something, but Ilara just smiled, a real smile this time. "You just have a good day, sir," she said. She walked to the register, and when Finch wasn't looking, she pulled 4 crumpled $1 bills from her own tip jar, money she needed for Lily's prescription copay, and paid his bill. As the old man slowly wheeled himself out of the diner, he paused at the door and looked back at her. He didn't say thank you. He just held her gaze for a long moment, a silent, unreadable acknowledgement passing between them, before disappearing into the gray curtain of rain. Ilara watched him go, feeling the familiar sting of her own precarious finances, but also a tiny, unfamiliar warmth in her chest. She had no idea that this simple, costly act of compassion was not an end, but a beginning. The old man became a fixture at the Golden Spoon. Every Tuesday and Thursday, right around 2 p.m. when the lunch rush subsided, the squeak of his wheelchair would announce his arrival. He always chose the same secluded booth, and he always ordered the same thing, 1 black coffee, 1 slice of plain toast. And every single time when the check came, he would go through the same pained pantomime of searching his empty pockets. And every single time, Ilara would intercept the check. "I've got it," she'd murmur before he could even form the words of apology. She'd then pay the $3.50 out of her own tips, a small but significant sacrifice that meant she often skipped her own lunch. Mr. Finch remained oblivious, assuming the old man was a distant relative of another staff member who had some sort of arrangement. As long as the bill was paid, his beady eyes looked elsewhere. A strange, silent friendship began to blossom in that corner booth. The man, who she learned was named Arthur, rarely spoke more than a few words. He was an observer, a listener. He would watch the life of the diner unfold with his piercing blue eyes, taking in every detail. But when Ilara was near, his attention was solely on her. He noticed the deep-set circles under her eyes, growing darker with each passing week. He saw the slight tremor in her hands after a particularly grueling shift, and he heard the hushed, frantic phone calls she'd take in the back alley during her short breaks. "No, Dr. Miller, I'll have the copay by Friday, I promise," she'd plead into her phone, her back pressed against the cold brick wall. "Is there any way we can postpone the new medication until then? I understand. Yes, I'll figure it out." One Thursday, after one such call, Ilara returned to the floor looking utterly defeated. The hospital was demanding an upfront payment for Lily's next round of treatments, a sum that felt as insurmountable as climbing Mount Everest. As she refilled Arthur's coffee, her hand trembled, sloshing a bit of the dark liquid onto the saucer. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled, her voice thick with unshed tears. Arthur reached out with a gnarled hand and gently touched her arm. His touch was surprisingly firm, steadying. "Are you all right, my dear?" he asked, his voice low and kind. It was the first personal question he had ever asked her, and for some reason, that simple inquiry from this silent man she barely knew broke through the dam she had so carefully constructed around her heart. The story of her life, her worries, her fears, came tumbling out in a hushed, desperate torrent. She told him about Lily, about her lost dreams of art school, about the mountain of medical bills that kept growing no matter how many extra shifts she took. She told him about the leaky faucet in their tiny apartment that the landlord refused to fix, and the constant, gnawing fear that one day she wouldn't be able to afford the medicine that kept her sister alive. Arthur just listened. He didn't offer empty platitudes or unsolicited advice. He simply sat there, his blue eyes fixed on her, absorbing her pain with a quiet, powerful empathy. In his silence, Ilara felt more seen and heard than she had in years. He became her confidant, the still point in her chaotic world. Sharing her burden with him, even though he had nothing to offer but his presence, made it feel infinitesimally lighter. This new dynamic also made her more protective of him. She started bringing him an extra slice of toast, or a small bowl of the soup of the day, claiming the kitchen had made a mistake. They'll just throw it out otherwise, she'd lie, knowing full well the cost would come from her own pocket. But her generosity did not go unnoticed by everyone. A co-worker, a jealous waitress named Brenda, who vied for the better shifts, saw these small acts of kindness not as compassion, but as foolishness, and worse, a potential violation of the rules. Brenda, who was always looking for an opportunity to get on Mr. Finch's good side, began to watch Ilara's interactions with the old man, her eyes sharp and calculating. One afternoon, Brenda saw Ilara slip Arthur a leftover muffin from the morning bake. Later that day, she casually mentioned it to Mr. Finch. "It's just strange, Gregory," Brenda said, polishing a fork with faux diligence. "Ilara seems to be giving away a lot of food to that old man in the wheelchair. Says it's kitchen leftovers. But you know how she is. Too soft. It's bad for business, letting people think this is a soup kitchen." Finch's eyes narrowed into slits. The seed of suspicion was planted. He had seen the receipts for the coffee and toast being paid, but free muffins, unaccounted for soup? That was a different story. That was theft. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Brenda," he said, his voice a low growl. "I'll be keeping a very close eye on Miss Vance." Ilara was completely unaware of the storm brewing. All she knew was that for 2 hours a week, in the quiet company of a crippled old man, she felt a glimmer of peace. She had no idea that her small sanctuary was about to become a battlefield, and her simple acts of kindness were being twisted into weapons to be used against her. The stakes were rising, and the breaking point was fast approaching. The breaking point arrived on a bleak, rain-lashed Thursday. The day had started badly and was spiraling downwards with terrifying speed. Ilara had woken up to a call from Lily's school nurse. Her sister had suffered a relapse and needed to be taken to the hospital. The taxi ride there, the frantic conversation with the doctors, and the sight of her sister, pale and weak in a sterile hospital bed, had left Ilara feeling hollowed out. She had arrived at work 2 hours late, her nerves frayed and her heart heavy with a familiar dread. Mr. Finch had been merciless. "Personal problems are not my problems, Vance," he had snarled, docking her 2 hours' pay and assigning her the dreaded task of deep cleaning the grease trap after her shift. "One more slip-up, and you'll be looking for a new job to be late for." By 2 p.m., Ilara was running on fumes and raw emotion. When Arthur wheeled in, his presence was like a balm to her shattered soul. Seeing him, she felt a desperate need to perform one small good act in a day filled with cruelty and fear. He ordered his usual. When she brought it to him, he could see the profound sadness in her eyes. "A difficult day?" he asked softly. Ilara just nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She wanted to tell him everything, to unload the terror she felt about Lily's health and the ever-present anxiety about money. Instead, she just tried to smile. "Nothing I can't handle." She knew he had no money as usual, but today she wanted to give him something more than just coffee and toast. On her way to the kitchen, she saw that the cook, a kindly man named Sal, had just pulled a fresh tray of apple turnovers from the oven. They were golden brown, glistening with sugar, and smelled of cinnamon and home, everything her life currently was not. "Sal, could I possibly—" she began. Sal, who had witnessed Finch's earlier tirade, understood immediately. He slid one of the warm pastries onto a plate. "For your friend. Don't say where you got it." Ilara's heart swelled with gratitude. She brought the turnover to Arthur, placing it beside his coffee. "A little something extra for you today," she whispered. "You look like you could use it too." For the first time, a genuine smile touched Arthur's lips. It transformed his face, chasing away some of the shadows. "Thank you, Ilara. That is very kind." He was just about to take a bite when a shadow fell over the table. "Well, well, well. What do we have here?" It was Mr. Finch. His arms were crossed, his face a mask of triumphant fury. Brenda hovered behind him, looking smug. He pointed a trembling, accusatory finger at the pastry. An apple turnover? How fascinating. I don't recall seeing that on this gentleman's check. In fact, I don't recall seeing a check at all. Alara's blood ran cold. Mr. Finch, it's a misunderstanding. I was going to pay for it all myself, just like I always do. Finch let out a short, barking laugh. Oh, you always do? So you admit you've been doing this for a while? Giving away company property to this freeloader? He spat the word out, his eyes glaring at Arthur with undisguised contempt. No, he's not a freeloader, Alara defended, her voice rising. I pay for his coffee and toast every time he comes in, out of my own tips. This was just a treat because he's a kind man, and I... Silence, Finch roared, slamming his hand down on a nearby table, making the cutlery jump. The entire diner went quiet. Every customer, every staff member turned to watch the unfolding drama. I don't care if you paid for it with gold bricks. You are conducting unauthorized transactions and giving away uninvoiced inventory. That, Miss Vance, is called theft. The accusation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Alara felt the hot sting of tears in her eyes. She was being publicly humiliated, accused of being a criminal for an act of kindness. That's not true, she whispered, her voice trembling. I would never steal from you. Oh, I think you would, Finch sneered, leaning in close, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss. I've been warned about you. You're a liability, sentimental, weak, and now you're a thief. He straightened up, his chest puffed out, enjoying his audience. Consider this your final warning, Vance. No, you know what? I'm tired of warnings. You're fired. Pack your things and get out of my diner. The words hit Alara like a physical blow. Fired. The one word she feared more than any other. Without this job, how would she pay for Lily's treatment? How would they pay the rent? The floor seemed to drop out from under her. Despair, cold and absolute, washed over her. She looked around at the silent, staring faces of her co-workers and the customers, her face burning with shame. She was at her lowest point, stripped of her job, her dignity, and her hope. She had nothing left. It was over. And then, a voice, quiet yet carrying an astonishing weight of authority, cut through the suffocating silence. That's enough. Every head turned. The voice had come from the man in the wheelchair. Arthur was looking at Mr. Finch, and the frail, gentle expression was gone. In its place was a look of cold, hard steel. His blue eyes, once placid, now blazed with an icy fire. Finch scoffed. And who do you think you are? Stay out of this, old man, before I have you thrown out on your ear. Arthur slowly, deliberately, placed his fork down on the plate beside the uneaten turnover. He looked directly at the spluttering manager, his voice as calm and sharp as a shard of ice. You can't fire her, Mr. Finch. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Because this restaurant is mine. The silence that followed Arthur's declaration was absolute. It was a dense, heavy quiet, broken only by the hum of the refrigerators and the drumming of rain against the window. For a moment, everyone in the Golden Spoon Diner seemed to be holding their breath, caught in a tableau of disbelief. Then Mr. Finch broke the spell with a coarse, braying laugh. Yours! This restaurant is yours! Oh, that's rich. That's the funniest thing I've heard all year. He turned to the other staff members, a cruel smirk on his face. Get a load of this guy. Thinks because he gets a few free handouts, he owns the place. Maybe the old-timer's gone senile. Alara stared at Arthur, her mind reeling. Was he delusional? Had his hardship finally unmoored him from reality? A part of her felt a surge of pity for him, even as her own world was collapsing. But Arthur didn't flinch. His gaze remained locked on Finch, unwavering and unnervingly calm. My name, he said, his voice resonating with a power that seemed impossible for his frail frame, is Arthur Pendleton. The name meant nothing to Finch, who simply rolled his eyes. But Sal, the cook, who had been peering through the service window, gasped. His face went pale. He had been with the company for 30 years, since before it was a massive, faceless corporation. He remembered the old stories. Ignoring Finch completely, Arthur reached into the inside pocket of his worn tweed jacket, A pocket Ilara had seen him search for non-existent money a dozen times. This time, however, his hand emerged with a sleek, modern smartphone. With slow, deliberate movements of his gnarled fingers, he tapped the screen once. "Carolyn," he said into the phone, his voice crisp and clear. "I'm at the Oak Street location." "Yes. Please come inside. Bring the portfolio." He ended the call and placed the phone on the table. He looked at Finch. "You have 60 seconds to retract your statement and apologize to Ms. Vance." Finch was momentarily stunned by the man's audacity but quickly recovered his bluster. "Apologize? I'll do no such thing. Security," he bellowed, even though the diner had no security guard. "Someone get this lunatic out of my establishment." No one moved. They were all transfixed by the quiet, unshakable authority radiating from the man in the wheelchair. Less than a minute later, the glass door of the diner swung open. A woman in a razor-sharp, dark gray business suit strode in. She was the picture of corporate power, from her polished heels to her immaculately styled hair. She carried a handsome leather briefcase, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, swept the room, instantly assessing the situation. They landed on Arthur. "Mr. Pendleton," she said, her voice a model of professional deference. "Are you all right, sir?" The entire diner seemed to gasp in unison. Finch's jaw went slack, his face draining of all color. He stared from the impeccably dressed woman to the disheveled man in the wheelchair, his mind refusing to connect the two. "I am fine, Carolyn," Arthur said. He gestured toward the manager. "This is Mr. Gregory Finch. He was, until a few moments ago, the manager of this branch. He was just in the process of firing one of my employees." Caroline, whose nameplate on her briefcase read, "Caroline Davies, Chief Operating Officer, Pendleton Hospitality Group," turned her cool gaze on Finch. The manager began to sweat profusely, his cheap polyester tie suddenly feeling like a noose. "Sir," Finch stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak, I don't understand. There must be some mistake. This man is a—" He stopped, unable to call the powerful figure a vagrant. "He is Arthur Pendleton," Caroline stated, her voice leaving no room for doubt. "The founder and majority shareholder of the Pendleton Hospitality Group, which owns every single Golden Spoon diner in this country." She opened her briefcase on an empty table and produced a portfolio. It contained corporate documents, press clippings, and photographs. On the top was a glossy magazine cover from a few years back. It featured a dynamic, handsome man in a fine suit standing in front of a gleaming new restaurant. Though younger and standing tall, the man was unmistakably Arthur, his piercing blue eyes the same. The truth descended upon the room with crushing weight. This wasn't just an owner. This was the legend himself. Arthur Pendleton had built this empire from a single sandwich shop he opened with his father 50 years ago. He was a titan of the industry, known for his business acumen, but also, in the company's early days, for his focus on community and employee welfare. A spirit that had long since been eroded by men like Finch. Ilara felt like she was in a dream. She looked at Arthur, the man she had been pitying, the man she had been paying for, and saw him for who he truly was. The wheelchair, the old clothes, it was all a disguise, a test, and she had been at the very center of it. She didn't know whether to feel relief, terror, or a profound sense of bewilderment. Arthur finally turned his full attention back to the trembling manager. The quiet kindness was gone. In its place was the righteous anger of a king who had just discovered a rot in his own kingdom. "Mr. Finch," Arthur began, his voice dangerously low, "we need to have a talk about your management style." The diner, once a stage for public humiliation, had transformed into a courtroom. Arthur Pendleton was the judge, Caroline Davies his formidable counsel, and Gregory Finch was the defendant, trembling in the dock. The staff and customers were a silent, captivated jury. "For the past 3 months," Arthur began, his voice cutting through the tense silence, "I have been visiting my establishments unannounced. A serious car accident 6 months ago put me in this wheelchair temporarily, I hope. But it gave me an unexpected opportunity. An opportunity to see my company not from the boardroom, but from the floor. To see it through the eyes of my customers and my most vulnerable staff." He gestured around the diner. "And what I have seen in this location has disgusted me." Finch opened his mouth to protest, but Caroline shot him a look so withering it froze the words in his throat. Arthur looked at Alara, his expression softening for a moment. I have sat in this booth twice a week. I have said very little, but I have listened to everything. I listened to this young woman, Alara, speak with kindness and patience to every customer, no matter how rude. I also listened to her hushed phone calls from the alley, pleading with doctors about her sister's medical care, a sister whose condition is being exacerbated by the stress this job has put her under. He then turned his blazing eyes back to Finch. And what have you done as a manager, Mr. Finch? Let me tell you what I've learned. He began to systematically dismantle Finch's career, piece by piece, using the very details Alara had unwittingly given him during their quiet conversations, supplemented by the hard data Caroline was now pulling from a tablet. You implemented a policy of mandatory, voluntary overtime, forcing staff to work 60-hour weeks without proper compensation, citing team spirit while you collected a bonus for reduced labor costs. Is that correct? Finch, sweating and pale, could only nod mutely. You switched our coffee supplier from the premium fair trade beans the Pendleton brand guarantees to a cheap, bitter bulk buy from an industrial supplier to shave 3 cents off every cup. Customer complaints about the coffee have gone up 400% in the last quarter. Yet you reported them as customer taste adjustments. He continued, his voice growing stronger with each charge. You reduced portion sizes on key menu items, yet kept the prices the same. A classic bait and switch that has driven away our loyal, long-term customers. Our evening traffic is down 30% year over year. You docked Ilara's pay by $20 last month for a single broken plate, claiming it was negligence, when I know for a fact that you have refused Sal's maintenance request for a new dish rack for the last 6 months because you deemed it an unnecessary capital expenditure. Each accusation was a hammer blow, revealing the rot at the core of Finch's management. He wasn't just a cruel boss. He was a liability, actively destroying the brand's reputation from the inside out for his own short-term gain. Brenda, who had instigated the confrontation, was trying to make herself invisible, slowly backing away toward the kitchen. Finally, Arthur came to the day's events. And today, he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl, today you chose to publicly humiliate and terminate an employee for an act of compassion. An act of compassion that cost her money she desperately needs. Money she gave willingly to preserve the dignity of a man she believed was less fortunate than herself. You accused her of theft for giving away a pastry that our own company policy dictates should be offered to staff at the end of the day to reduce waste. A policy you conveniently ignore so you can write it off as a loss. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. You mistake kindness for weakness, Mr. Finch, but you are the one who is weak. Your leadership is built on fear, not respect. Your profits are built on deceit, not quality. You do not represent the values of this company. You have cancer within it. Arthur looked at Caroline. Please prepare Mr. Finch's severance package. Finch's eyes widened with a flicker of hope. It will consist of 1 empty cardboard box for his personal effect, Arthur continued, his voice like flint, and an escort to ensure he is off the premises in the next 10 minutes. He is fired, effective immediately, for gross misconduct and willful damage to company brand and property. He will not be receiving a reference. The reckoning was complete. Finch, utterly defeated, didn't even try to argue. He simply stood there, his face a mess of shock and humiliation, as Caroline calmly made a call. 2 large men in black suits, who had apparently been waiting in the car, entered the diner. Without a word, they flanked the now former manager and guided him towards his office. The reign of terror at the Golden Spoon was over. The staff, who had been living under Finch's thumb for years, looked at each other with dawning expressions of shock and overwhelming relief. Sal the cook let out a whoop from the kitchen. The jury had reached its verdict. Justice had been served. With Finch dispatched, an awkward silence fell over the diner. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a profound sense of uncertainty. The staff watched Arthur Pendleton with a mixture of awe and fear. Alara stood frozen by the booth, her mind a whirlwind of confusion. She had been fired, then saved, and now she stood before the mythical founder of the company, the man she had been unknowingly buying coffee for. Arthur turned his wheelchair to face her directly. The hard, judgmental fire in his eyes was gone, replaced by the gentle, empathetic gaze she had come to know. "Ilara," he said, his voice soft again, "please, sit down." Numbly, she sank into the vinyl seat opposite him. Caroline Davies stood discreetly a few feet away, a silent, professional guardian. "I imagine you have a lot of questions," Arthur said with a small, wry smile. "And I owe you an apology. My deception, while necessary for my investigation, was not fair to you. I put you in an impossible position." Ilara shook her head, finding her voice at last. I, I don't understand. Why? Why all of this?" "Because numbers on a page can't tell you the truth," he explained, his gaze sweeping over the worn-out diner. "My company has grown so large, I've become disconnected from the heart of it. After my accident, I had a lot of time to think. I realized I was reading reports about profit margins and customer satisfaction scores, but I had no idea what it actually felt like to be in one of my restaurants. I wanted to know if the spirit I started this business with, a spirit of community, good food, and treating people with dignity, was still alive." He looked directly into her eyes. "In most places, I found it was barely breathing. But here, in you, I found it was alive and well. You acted with integrity and compassion when you thought no one of importance was watching. That, Ilara, is the true measure of character." Tears welled in Ilara's eyes, but this time they were not tears of despair. "I was just trying to be kind." "Never say just," Arthur corrected her gently. "In a world that is often unkind, that is everything. You upheld the Pendleton values better than the manager I was paying a six-figure salary to. You protected the dignity of a customer. You cared about the quality of your service. You are the kind of person I built this company for, and the kind of person I want leading it." He paused, letting his next words sink in. "Mr. Finch created a vacancy when he left. I would like you to fill it." Ilara stared at him, uncomprehending. "Fill it? You mean, you want me to be a waitress again? I thought he fired me." Arthur chuckled, a warm, rich sound. "He did, and I am unfiring you. But no, Ilara, I don't want you to be a waitress. I want you to be the new general manager of this diner." The world tilted on its axis. Her, a manager? She had no degree, no experience, no training. All she had was exhaustion and debt. "Me? But I don't know how to manage a restaurant. I wouldn't even know where to start." "You start," Arthur said firmly, "by doing exactly what you've been doing. You treat your staff with respect. You treat your customers with dignity. You take pride in the food you serve. That is the foundation. The rest," he glanced at Caroline, who gave a reassuring nod. "We can teach you. Caroline's team will provide you with all the training and support you need. You will have a budget to refurbish this diner, to hire more staff, to purchase the best equipment, and to restore the quality this place has lost." It was too much to take in. A job, a promotion, a future. It was a lifeline thrown to her when she thought she had already drowned. But Arthur wasn't finished. "There is one more thing," he said, his expression turning serious. "I know about your sister Lily. I know about the bills, the treatments, the constant worry. The Pendleton Hospitality Group has a charitable foundation. Its purpose is to support our employees and their families in times of crisis. It is one of our most important, yet underutilized programs." He gestured to Caroline, who stepped forward and placed a simple, elegant business card on the table. "This is Dr. Alistair Reed," Arthur explained. "He is the head of pediatric rheumatology at the finest private hospital in the state. He is also on the board of our foundation. He is expecting your call. The Pendleton Foundation will be covering all of Lily's medical expenses from this day forward. All of them. We will ensure she gets the absolute best care available." This time the tears came freely, a torrent of relief so profound it felt like a physical weight was being lifted from her shoulders. The constant, crushing fear that had been her companion for years finally began to recede. She could see a future for her sister that wasn't dictated by co-pays and deductibles. She could see a future for herself that wasn't defined by 10-hour shifts and soul-crushing exhaustion. She looked at the old man across the table, this powerful, kind, and incredibly deceptive man. And for the first time in a very long time, she saw not just a way to survive, but a chance to live. "Why?" she whispered, the word thick with emotion. Why are you doing all of this for me? Arthur Pendleton reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. Because you, Alara Vance, he said, his voice full of conviction, bought me a cup of coffee when you thought I had nothing. You showed me that the heart of my company was not dead. You didn't just save a man from a moment of shame. You reminded an old man why he built this entire empire in the first place. You earned this. Now let's get to work. 6 months felt like a lifetime. The transformation of the Golden Spoon Diner was nothing short of miraculous, a physical manifestation of the seismic shift that had occurred in Alara Vance's life. The dingy, worn-out relic of the past was gone, replaced by a vibrant, welcoming space that hummed with a newfound energy. Under Alara's management, and with the generous budget Arthur had provided, the diner was reborn. The cracked vinyl booths were reupholstered in warm, cherry-red leather. New hardwood floors gleamed under soft, modern lighting that replaced the old fluorescent hum. The kitchen was completely refitted with state-of-the-art equipment, and Sal the cook, now with 2 talented assistants, created a menu that blended the diner's classic comfort food with fresh, high-quality, locally sourced ingredients. The air, once thick with the smell of stale coffee and grease, was now filled with the tantalizing aromas of fresh baking, sizzling bacon, and brewing premium coffee, the kind Arthur Pendleton had built his name on. But the most significant change wasn't in the decor or the menu, it was in the people. Alara, now the respected and beloved manager, led with the same compassion she had shown in her darkest days. She implemented fair schedules, paid a living wage, and established a profit-sharing program for all employees. She knew every staff member's name, their family situations, their aspirations. She fostered an environment of teamwork and mutual respect, a place where people were happy to come to work. The tense, fearful atmosphere under Mr. Finch was a distant, almost unbelievable memory. Laughter now echoed from the kitchen, and the servers on the floor moved with a genuine warmth and efficiency. The customers felt the change too. Old regulars who had been driven away by Finch's cost-cutting measures began to return, drawn back by word of mouth. New faces appeared every day, filling the diner with a lively chatter that was the music of success. The Golden Spoon was no longer just a place to eat, it was the heart of the neighborhood again. Alara herself was transformed. The weary, defeated young woman was gone. In her place was a confident, capable leader. She carried herself with a quiet authority, her smile now genuine and frequent. The dark circles under her eyes had vanished, replaced by a sparkle of purpose. She had discovered a talent for business she never knew she possessed, a natural instinct for hospitality that Arthur had seen in her from the very beginning. Her personal life had blossomed in tandem with her professional one. With the Pendleton Foundation's support, Lily had been admitted to the specialist hospital and was receiving groundbreaking treatment. Her health had improved dramatically. For the first time in years, Lily was more than just her illness. She was a vibrant teenager, full of laughter and plans for the future. The sisters could now talk about art in college and silly gossip, their conversations free from the suffocating shadow of medical bills. One bright Tuesday afternoon, a sleek black town car pulled up outside the diner. Arthur Pendleton, now walking with the aid of a handsome mahogany cane instead of a wheelchair, stepped out. He was dressed in a finely tailored suit, looking every bit the business magnate he was. He entered the bustling diner, and a hush fell over the room as people recognized the legendary founder. Alara greeted him at the door with a warm embrace. "Arthur, welcome," she said, her voice filled with genuine affection. "The place looks wonderful, Alara," he said, his blue eyes twinkling with pride as he surveyed the happy, crowded room. "More importantly, it feels wonderful." She led him to his old corner booth, which she had unofficially reserved for him. It was the only part of the diner she had insisted remain untouched, a small plaque on the wall beside it reading, "The Founder's Table." A young waitress, new and eager, came over. "Welcome to the Golden Spoon, sir. My name is Maria. What can I get for you today?" "I'll have a black coffee, please, Maria," Arthur said with a kind smile, "and my friend here will have her usual chamomile tea." As Maria left to get their order, Arthur looked at Alara across the table. The dynamic between them had evolved from benefactor and beneficiary to that of mentor and protege, and deeper still, to true friendship. I read your weekly report, he said. Profits are up 150%. Staff turnover is at an all-time low. Customer satisfaction is the highest in the entire company. You are not just managing a diner, Alara. You are setting a new standard for the entire Pendleton Group. Other managers are being sent here to learn from you. Alara blushed. I just run it the way I'd want to be treated. It's not complicated. No, Arthur agreed, his gaze full of meaning. It isn't, but it is rare. He grew quiet for a moment, looking around the vibrant room, a testament to what was possible when business was guided by humanity. You know, he said softly, I came here that first day, a tired, cynical old man, wondering if I had wasted my life building something that had lost its soul. I was looking for a reason to give up. Instead, I found you. He reached across the table, his hand resting near hers. You didn't just save this diner, Alara. You saved me. You reminded me that one small act of kindness, one cup of coffee given freely, can be the most powerful investment in the world. The waitress returned with their drinks. As she set down the coffee, Arthur smiled. And please, he said to her, bring me the check when you have a moment. I'm paying today. A year passed, painting another layer of life onto the reborn golden spoon. It was no longer a story of recovery, but one of established, resounding success. The diner had become a local institution, a place reporters wrote about in the business and community section of the city paper. Alara was no longer just a manager. She was a pillar of the neighborhood, organizing charity bake sales, sponsoring a local youth sports team, and knowing the names not just of her customers, but of their children and their dogs. She had found more than a career. She had found a home, a purpose woven into the fabric of the community she served every day. The phone call from Caroline Davies came on a crisp autumn morning. It wasn't a check-in call, it was a summons. Mr. Pendleton requests your presence at the corporate headquarters downtown. He has a matter of importance to discuss with you. Alara's heart fluttered with a familiar mix of gratitude and anxiety. She had seen Arthur regularly, but always at the diner, his founder's table, a comfortable, familiar space. The corporate headquarters was another world entirely, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that scraped the sky, a symbol of the immense corporate power she had never truly reconciled with the kind, unassuming man she knew. Dressed in a simple but professional navy blue dress, she walked into the lobby of Pendleton Tower. The cavernous space, all marble and muted chrome, was designed to impress and intimidate. Men and women in sharp, expensive suits moved with a brisk, silent urgency. It was the world of Mr. Finch, magnified 1,000 times over. For a moment, she felt like the weary waitress again, out of place and out of her depth. Carolyn greeted her with a warm smile and led her to a silent, wood-paneled elevator that whisked them to the top floor. The penthouse office was breathtaking, with a panoramic view of the entire city sprawling beneath them. Arthur was sitting not behind the immense mahogany desk, but in a comfortable leather armchair near the window, a tartan blanket over his legs. He looked older than he had just a few weeks ago, a certain fragility shadowing his features, but his blue eyes were as sharp and lucid as ever. Alara, he said, his voice a little weaker but still full of warmth. Thank you for coming. Please, sit. She sat opposite him, the entire city her backdrop. Is everything all right, Arthur? He offered her a gentle, knowing smile. An old soldier can't fight a war on two fronts. My battle to recover from the accident is over. The war against time, however, has an undefeated record. He said it without a trace of self-pity. It was simply a fact. My doctors have advised me to put my affairs in order. That is why you are here. This isn't just my company, Alara. It is my legacy. He gestured to the city below. Down there are 200 other Golden Spoon diners. Many are successful, but they are sterile. They are run by the book, managed by people who look at spreadsheets, not faces. They are profitable, but they are not alive. They have no soul. He leaned forward, his expression intense. The board sees my declining health as an opportunity. They want to bring in a CEO from the outside, a cost cutter, someone who will consolidate, streamline, and maximize shareholder value. Another Finch, but with a better pedigree. I cannot let that happen. I will not let my father's legacy, our legacy, become just another heartless chain. He slid a handsome leather-bound portfolio across the coffee table towards her. On the cover, embossed in gold leaf, were the words, "The Lighthouse Project." "This is my final act as chairman," Arthur said. "My answer to the board. It's a new, fully funded division within the company. Its sole mandate is to identify underperforming and soulless diners and transform them. Not with marketing gimmicks or financial engineering, but by reinvesting in people, quality, and community. By turning them into lighthouses for their neighborhoods, just as you did." Elara opened the portfolio. Inside were detailed plans, budgets, and mission statements. It was ambitious, revolutionary, and deeply humane. "I need someone to lead it," Arthur said softly. "Someone who understands that our most valuable asset isn't our real estate. It's our spirit. Someone the board cannot corrupt or intimidate because they are motivated by purpose, not by greed." "I need you, Elara." Elara's breath caught in her throat. She looked from the portfolio to the sprawling city below. "Me? Arthur, I'm a diner manager. I know how to run one restaurant. This is a corporate division. I don't know anything about that world." "You know everything that matters," he countered firmly. "You know how to listen. You know how to empower people. You know that kindness is not a cost, but an investment. I am not asking you to become a corporate executive. I am asking you to be a teacher. I want you to find other Elaras out there, other managers with embers of that spirit, and fan them into flame. This office, this title, they are just tools. The mission is the same one you've been on since the day you paid for a stranger's coffee." He saw the fear and hesitation in her eyes. "Your work at the Oak Street Diner is done. You built a beautiful, self-sustaining world there. But your journey, my dear, was never meant to end in one place. It was meant to be a beginning, a blueprint." Elara looked out the window at the thousands of tiny cars and distant buildings, and for the first time she didn't see an intimidating metropolis. She saw a landscape of countless untold stories, of people working hard, struggling, and hoping for a small act of kindness. She thought of herself just 2 years ago, feeling invisible and alone. What if someone could build a company whose very mission was to make people like her feel seen? A sense of calm, of profound clarity, washed over her. Her fear was eclipsed by a burgeoning sense of purpose, larger than anything she had ever imagined. Arthur wasn't just offering her a job. He was entrusting her with his life's work. He was passing the torch. She closed the portfolio and met his gaze, her own eyes clear and determined. "Okay, Arthur," she said, her voice steady. "I'll do it. Where do we begin?" A slow, brilliant smile spread across Arthur Pendleton's face, a look of pure, unburdened relief. His legacy was safe. Elara Vance's story is a powerful reminder that our true character isn't defined by our circumstances, but by how we choose to act within them. In her darkest hour, when she had almost nothing to give, she chose to give kindness. She offered dignity to a man who, in the eyes of the world, had none. And in doing so, she unlocked a destiny she never could have imagined. This story proves that you never know the impact one small act of compassion can have. The person you help today could be the one holding the keys to your future tomorrow. It's a testament to the idea that integrity and empathy are not weaknesses in a cruel world, but are, in fact, the most profound and enduring strengths. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of kindness, please take a moment to hit that like button. Share it with someone who might need to hear a message of hope. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that celebrate the best of the human spirit. Thank you for listening.